Okay.
All right.
Welcome into Shaping Reality for August 2024. Did you think it was going to be this crazy? I'm joined tonight with author and consciousness educator Penny Kelly. Hi, Penny. How are you?
Oh, hi. I'm good. I'm great. I'm feeling really good. So
Yeah. So
it's
you,
always good to be back home, even though home is a little chaotic at the moment. So,
yeah.
because of the move, moving.
Where are
We're,
you moving?
um, I'm moving. I had to move my library. You can see the new library behind me. And I moved to the third floor, and my
Oh,
son is moving to the second floor, and my grandson is moving to the fourth floor. And so that's kind of a round robin thing. And
yeah.
so we have chaos everywhere. So,
Chaos. Well, yeah, you'll get it figured out. Why don't you tell us a little bit, just a little snippet of where you've been for the last couple weeks?
oh, wow. Oh, guys, I went to the Tesla Technology Conference and I presented there, and I was really nervous. I was like, wow. And what I did was to present consciousness as a call for a science of consciousness. And so I was very nervous, and I had created this very low key, kind of timid PowerPoint. And then I got there, and the very first opening talk was by one of my heroes in the world of plasma research. And in the middle of his talk, he makes this comment, and the comment was something like, "We we're stalled. We're stalled by the problem of consciousness." And that was all he said. And then he kept going, and I was like, "Oh, wow, okay." I'm going to change my presentation to be much bolder. And so I went back to my room after the last talk was over, and I stayed up until 1 a.m, just redoing my presentation, adding pictures, really being much bolder. And and then I was nervous. I was like, did I go too far? So, but it really went very well. And when it was over, I was kind of swamped with people asking questions. And I thought, okay, quite a few scientists and engineers came up, and they were asking a lot of questions. Well, how about this? Well, what about that? And they were, I think, surprised that I had an answer for everything. So when I left there, it was a very good feeling, and it was a feeling that I had been a successful farmer in the fields of consciousness, planted lots of seeds.
Oh, that's exciting. Wonderful. Well, I'm sure you're looking forward to next year as well. Maybe you'll fly next year.
Maybe if we still have airplanes next year.
Airplanes by next year. Yeah. Which brings
Yeah.
us into the look-see.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So what's on your
Wow.
mind tonight about the look-see? I made some notes myself. So tonight, folks that are watching, we're going to talk about the look-see a little bit. And then Penny has a meditation we're
Yeah.
going to do together about in the middle. And then we're going to move into the topic of consciousness to kind of close
Right.
us out and send us on our way with some good information.
Yeah. Very good. Okay. Yeah. So what do you want to ask about the look-see? There are
Well,
so
what
many things this time. I left out so much. It was like, it seems like it's watered down, but you can't talk about everything that's happening. And so I left the things out that other people were already talking about, and just tried to focus on things I thought were really key or important for us to understand.
Yeah. You know, I do have comments to make about that, and I've listened to the look-see twice now,
Okay.
and plus I try to stay very connected with what is going on in, oh, I don't know if in the attitude of the public, or, what
Right.
people are saying, what people are talking about, and I'm on different platforms just seeing where people are,
Yeah.
and what I'm seeing, and it gives me goosebumps and a happy feeling to say this, is that people have shifted.
Yes.
They have shifted.
I
They're
don't
they're not buying any of the bullshit anymore. Excuse
know.
the French, folks. Um, and they're
I
shifted in a
don't.
wonderful way, because I have seen so many funny videos of people morphing into a monkey making fun of the whole monkeypox thing. In other words, they're not angry, they're just laughing at it
Yeah,
at this juncture. So I am seeing a shift that people are like, "Oh, no, what this is so ridiculous." In every
I
post
know.
that I watch, and I understand that the algorithm is feeding me what they think I want to see.
Right.
However, across so many different platforms, I'm seeing a consistent message of people are just
Yeah.
done and fed up, which brings me back to the look-see when in your
I
comments about the tort laws and the commerce clause. It
Oh,
is the sense
yeah.
that there has been so much corruption
I know.
put into place behind the scenes, even before we knew, most of us knew that there was an issue going on, that the whole thing's just gotta come down.
I had that same thought earlier today. It's like, I don't I start picking up the shift in, like, late July, um, but that whole feeling of we're tired of the corruption. We know something bad is happening with the children. We are understanding that we're dealing with avatars. We're not even dealing with real people. We're dealing with computer generated images pretending to be presidents and cabinet members and military whatever. And that is, it's like, okay. And I think for me, and I was going to put this in the look-see, but I didn't. There was a statement that I read, and I've read it 100 times in other campaigns. Send money. We need to win this state, or we need to get control of this region, or this government, whatever. And the way that struck me was just this. You know what? They're telling us they're buying our votes. They're buying our government. Whoever has the most money wins and gets to run things for a while. And it just struck me as we can't be doing this.
Yeah.
It isn't about who has the most money. It's about who has the best qualifications for the job. And I don't see any one of them having the best qualifications for the job. So I am in this place of, I don't see people being willing to play those kinds of games. And the shift that I started picking up right after the last look-see, when I end one look-see, I start the next one. I was picking up this shift. I wondered if it was triggered by the Trump attempted assassination, the controversy around that, the similarities between the JFK, it's a lone shooter, and all that stuff. But all of that sort of congealed into this gut firming resolve that if I had to say a sentence that would kind of characterize that resolve, it would be, okay, try it, sucker. That would be it.
Mhm.
And there's this feeling or this attitude in people, bring it. I'm tired of this. We're going to deal with it. We are going to deal with it.
Mhm.
And that there's going to be some messes. I do see it gets pretty intense. So, over the next year, starting now and over the next, maybe not a whole year, but pretty close to a whole year. And then there's a respite or a break, and then it starts up again. And so we'll see how that goes. But
Yeah. You
there's
know,
big issue.
I saw a video on some platform, I don't remember what, it doesn't make a difference. It was a gentleman in a restaurant, and he walked up to Francis Collins.
The
You
scientist?
Yeah, from the CDC. And he was filming it, and he said, "Mr. Collins," and Francis Collins was there with his wife having dinner, and the guy says, "You belong in prison along with
Oh,
Ralph Baric, Peter Daszak, and Anthony Fauci. You have killed and maimed so many people." And he went from being, smiling, like, "Oh, someone recognizes me," to just his face just dropped, and his poor little wife next to him's mouth just dropped open
Oh, wow.
in public on film and then posted across every platform.
Wow.
And it made me think of Cliff High's Webbot report that says they're not gonna be able to go out on the street anymore.
Oh, that is true. I have been seeing that for a while now.
Mhm,
Somebody's gonna be the unfortunate first one, and
mhm.
you know how people copy, so other people are gonna say, "Oh, that's how to deal with it," and they're gonna go and do something, that takes out somebody else that they don't like, and gets messy. So
Well, and I can't imagine that things will unfold any differently, at least I can't see that based on what our perceptions are in this reality right now.
yeah, true.
However, I do see just a complete being everybody's done.
Yeah,
They've lied
that's
to us
right.
about the government, they've lied in the medical field, they've lied in education, they've lied in every area, even about who we are as a country,
I
and
know.
so everyone knows it now, I mean, the jig is up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really true. And I think that's a good thing in terms of us coming back to our power. Um, that really is a necessary step. And it doesn't have to be ugly, probably get pretty messy, but it isn't going to be forever.
Yeah.
And when you have rage, when consciousness, I talked a little bit in the look-see about consciousness has only two things that it can
Mhm.
track: love and fear. And when you're on the fear track, and it keeps on going, and the stimulation of those points in the hypothalamus that are specifically stimulation points for fear, it goes from fear to irritation, or no, from noticing to, then I forget the exact track, but there's like 7 or 8 stages. Each one is a little more ferocious than the one before. So after you get to full attention, then you decide, is this good or bad? If it's bad, then there's this avoidance kind of reaction. If you can't avoid it, then you get irritated. If you can't get it to stop, the irritation starts to balloon, and it becomes fear, and then anger, and then rage, and then temporary insanity. Um, that's the cycle that we are in. And when you get to the point of anger, all of your chemistry is oriented to that kind of anger. And now you have two options. One is you act it out, or two is you do a primal scream.
Mhm.
I don't see people knowing that, number one. And the primal scream would be, as a population, I don't know that we could all scream together, or even that we would need to. But the problem is that people don't know about that. And so what's the alternative? It's acting it out. You have to act out and use up those chemicals. Anger is a chemical state, and rage is even worse. And the more enraged you are, the more strength and power you have. And if you've ever dealt with somebody who's like I had the opportunity to be in a group of people, women, who were at a clinic. This is a long time ago. We went to a weekend, uh, like a weekend seminar thing at this clinic. I think it was in Allen Park, Michigan. And we were working on relationships, and coming into our own power and all that kind of stuff. And one of the people at the conference was a young woman, who was schizophrenic. She might have been 16, something like that, 14, 16 years old. She was young. And she got into one of her schizophrenic rages for some reason, I don't know. And that girl grabbed a hold of a steel door on the wall and ripped it off the wall, and then was chasing us down the hallway, swinging that door, and causing absolute utter chaos. And I was stunned at the strength of that girl. Unbelievable. And then finally, the couple people who were leading the weekend talked her into quieting down, but she still had that door in front of her and was threatening to hit anybody who came close to her. And finally, she put the door down. And, the rest of the weekend was a little bit unsettled. But the strength that temporary insanity gives you is unbelievable. It's not earthly. And that's where we're very close to that kind of rage. And I don't want to see that unfold. I don't want to see people get hurt.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that does the energy field feel to you like that type of rage, or does it for me, my attitude is, "Yeah, I'm not doing that." I mean, it's like it's like I'm just, oh, I'm not doing that.
Yeah,
So
it is.
I can't get anything up for it anymore, you
Yeah,
know?
right. Yeah, it's don't bother me for a lot
Yeah.
of people. And that's really very good because that adds a stabilizing effect. There are some people who are incredibly angry. There are some people who are going to be paid to act angry. There are some people who are going to be hurting. Um, it looks like we have a tangled mess coming over the next couple of months, financial and war, just those two things alone. And then problems with food systems. So people they're like at their last nerve. Don't ask me to do anything. Don't ask me to be there for you. Don't ask me for another darn dime. Dot, 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 dot. And that is really where some people are at. I think that people like yourself and probably a lot of people that are listening, are people that are going to hold this amazing, stable place. And that, those who are angry will wear themselves out with that anger. Hopefully, they won't do anything that hurts themselves or their future. But then there's this large, huge group. And if you look at statistics, the statistics go something like this: 3%, 3% of a population are all that's required to start generating some new ideas and new thoughts. And if that doesn't die out, then 10% is enough to change the attitude a little bit, but only temporarily. And if it continues to grow and it gets to like 20%, some people will change their behavior. When it gets to 25% of the people who are thinking in this new way, now you have a change of what are called norms, what is considered to be normal behavior and acceptable. And at 30% and above, you have the makings of an entire revolution. And that's really, we're almost there.
Yeah.
So, and the revolution doesn't have to be violent. It can be just, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm doing this. And that really is where we're at. So that process of letting things grow, I can't tell you how many times my own people have said, don't quit, you're almost there. And I'm like, almost where? And finally, they said, look up the statistics for change. And so I forget what I put in to Google, but I started doing some reading and some research and was like, oh, okay. And so then I went back and said, you mean we're almost to the 30%? And they said, yeah. So I'm like, okay, all right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with that just based on what I see. I had
Yeah.
an experience, and now let me just guys tell you my background. I am an aged out soccer mom. I'm not a consciousness teacher like Penny. I'm the lady next door that,
Okay.
that's where I'm at, yeah, on the planet, the lady next door.
I love it. Oh my.
I was listening, and this is not a political statement. I listen to a lot of stuff. I was listening to the Trump Musk interview. When they got to the point that they started talking about energy and drilling, I had to turn it off because I was so disgusted that we're still pretending like zero point energy is not on the planet.
Oh yeah.
And the point I wanna make is that if an aged out soccer mom who lives next door is like, "Okay,
Yeah.
I'm waiting for it, it's gonna in the next month, I want it's gonna be about the size of a bread box, it's gonna, run my whole home and everything." If
Yep.
I'm demanding that, energetically, where's
Right.
the rest of the people?
They'll come along. Somebody's got to be what they call first mover. So, you're obviously in that group. First movers start the process, they start the ball rolling, and then other people go, "Hey." So yeah, I do see so many changes in the way we live, in the way we think about the world. Um, there's there's some things. Nah, let me not say that. I'll just say
I
I
no,
know
say it.
I know I can't. I can't. I just know that there's some big information is coming, okay? Big,
Okay,
uh,
okay.
planet-wide, big changes in the history, in the acknowledged history of our people and our planet, and it's much more in alignment with truth, okay?
Okay.
So,
Love hearing that. Here's one question I have for you. We have this whole political scene, it
yeah,
particularly in America, but around the world as well.
yeah,
I'm having this sense, Penny, that the real shift in our systems is
yeah.
not gonna come from the political arena.
Oh, no.
It's these guys that are working behind the scenes, and they're doing stuff, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden, that whole political thing and I'm getting goosebumps, so that tells me I'm on track.
Yep,
The whole political thing is just going to crumble and fade
I
away,
know.
and we're going to march forward with technology in all types of different areas that's going to be brilliant and sustainable
Yeah.
and good for humans and good for the planet.
One of the things you hear at the Tesla Technology Conference is all the guys working in their garage or in their basement, um, that have done amazing things, energetic wise, just healing wise, et cetera. And that's like, you know, right there, you know, right there. And the old system is about to drown in new information and new technology that I think is going to cause the old guard, the old guys, to be quite upset. Like, oh, you can't do that. You can't. That's not fair. I'm like, what's not fair? You think you just get licensed to screw us for the next 500 years? No,
Yeah.
sorry.
And the
And
frustration for me, particularly with the energy sector, is a few multi-billionaires
oh,
want to keep the gravy train running into their bank account at the expense of millions of people who are living and dying in poverty and despair.
I know. I said in the look-see, I think at the end of it, that's one of our biggest lessons is letting just a handful of people get all the money and then try to control everything. And one of the things I learned long time ago, about very wealthy people is that they don't think about the people. Some people think about people. Some people think about equipment. Other people think about money. And so the ones who only think about money don't really, I don't know what's missing in their brain, but they don't connect the things that they're doing with the people and how people live, and they don't care about the people. So that makes it, all the much more egregious in my mind. But they are always looking for what kind of scheme can we put in place that will allow us to make big money? They're not interested in little money. They aren't. They aren't interested in anything that helps mankind. They're only interested in big, big projects that force the destruction of the old in order to have an excuse to promote the new, which then, somebody's busy tearing down the old over here. But over here, there's all kinds of deals that are being made that are worth billions of dollars. That's the way they operate. And I think it was the day that Hurricane Katrina was hitting New Orleans, and there was a meeting going on here at the farm, and they were all financial people, and they were people who created financial instruments. And they were talking, I brought this up somewhere, I don't remember where, but they were talking about, let's create a new kind of corporation. It was called a B Corp, for benefit. So those kinds of corporations would be for profit, but they operated for the benefit of the people. So they were trying to do something that was good, but the rest of the conversation was, well, we created this instrument and we set up that ETF and we did this, and this one did well, and that is not doing it. They were creating financial instruments to make money with, and they were making money, big money, hand over fist. And I was listening to this total, farmer with zero background in finance and going, OMG, that just blew me away. For some reason, up until that point, I thought, or had the attitude, that finances were sort of made in heaven and just descended upon us, and we either went for it or we didn't, or we couldn't afford it or we did, or whatever. But what became clear to me that day is that there are groups of people, and they were highly connected, and they were making up stuff that would allow them to get people to buy their instruments, invest in them for minimum return, and voila, they would have a fortune. So
Now, doesn't that go right back to the brain can only function from love or fear?
yeah,
So they're living in fear that they're not gonna have enough. I mean, it's just kind of a simple equation.
yeah.
Anybody can figure this out. Isn't it just about the fact that they're completely incapable of feeling comfortable enough to love?
I don't know. They were such an unusual group. And since then, I've listened to many financial people, and they all are the same. They only focus on what are the returns, and they don't ever think about, well, what about the earth? Well, what about the habitat? What about the people? What about the disruption? Who's going to want to do that job or that work for that amount of money? And that blows my mind. It's like,
Yeah.
you guys, that's not going to work long term, and they don't expect it to. As soon as they get something rolling, they're on to creating the next thing. So, yeah, it's definitely a game, and it's a game played by people that never get filled up ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, there
it's
you go.
kind of sad.
Well, we're about halfway through the hour. What do you say we jump into the meditation now? And then I have
Okay,
a bunch of questions about consciousness that we
okay,
can
all
go
right.
through.
So you guys, I have this little meditation. It's kind of like a guided meditation, and it's not real long. It's maybe 10-15 minutes. So it starts where you just sit down, you get quiet, you close your eyes for a minute, and imagine that you're in your kitchen, okay? And you go to the cupboard and you get out a large bowl and a stirring spoon, big spoon to stir, okay? And then put the bowl on the cupboard, and then go to your refrigerator and get out a half-gallon carton of white light. Just pull it out of the fridge. Okay, imagine that same size as a half gallon of milk. but it's a half gallon of white light. And open up the carton of white light and pour that entire carton into the bowl, okay? If you didn't have a big enough bowl, go get another bowl, okay? One that's big enough to hold a half gallon. And then go to the cupboard and get out a can of gold crystals. Okay, go back over to the bowl and pour the gold crystals into the bowl of white light and begin to stir gently, mixing well. Okay, you don't have to stir too long, but just enough to mix it, and then go to the pantry or a storage cupboard and get out a jar of pink love. And then put 2 tablespoons of pink love into the bowl of white light and gold crystals, and now begin to stir slowly and steadily. Okay? Now, notice that the gold is dissolving into the light, turning it into this beautiful golden colored light. And that pink love changes the consistency and the character of the first 2 ingredients, turning them into this very lightweight, airy substance, kind of like whipped cream, very lightweight. Then put the bowl in the oven and close the door, but don't turn the heat on. Just let the bowl sit in there and continue to transform without any interference. Okay, so while it's transforming, imagine that you're sitting back down at the kitchen table, and imagine again you're closing your eyes. And then as you close your eyes, become aware of your body, your whole body from head to toe. And then notice that you have a small, quiet zipper about 4 or 5 inches long on your chest. Open that zipper and notice that you can see your heart. Reach into your chest and then just very gently, very lovingly massage your heart just a little bit. And as you rub your fingers over that heart, notice that there's another zipper in your heart. That's a smaller zipper. Unzip the zipper on your heart and then imagine that you are breathing in 10 breaths. So we're going to breathe in 10 breaths, and each one is going to be something a little different. The first breath that you breathe in is your health. Okay? The second breath is strength. The third breath is beauty. You have a right to beauty. The fourth breath is knowledge. The fifth breath is truth. The sixth breath is forgiveness for yourself first and then for others. Forgiveness for self and others. The seventh breath is understanding. The eighth breath is wisdom. The ninth breath is joy. And the 10th breath is gratitude. Then take one final breath in. Well, it's not your final breath, but it's one last breath for the heart. And then close the zipper on your heart. And let it pump all of those gifts throughout your body. Feel all those gifts all the way down to your toes. Feel it in the feet, the heel of your foot, behind your knee, in your hips, your thighs. Feel it in a small part of your back, all those amazing gifts moving throughout your system. And then zip up the zipper on your chest. Then notice that on your forehead is a small button. And when you push that button, the top of your head just unlatches and springs up, sort of like the cover on an old-time Jack in the Box kind of thing. So close it down for a moment, just for a moment, now that you know where the button is and how to open it, and go get the bowl of golden pink light from the oven. Then get the tablespoon you were using earlier. Now sit down at the table, put the bowl of golden pink light on the table, and then push the button on your forehead and let the top of your skull pop up again. Then dip the tablespoon into the bowl of golden pink light and just kind of drizzle it around the skull, around the brain. And then close the top of the skull. Sit quietly for just a moment and let that golden pink light saturate your awareness. Let it bring you to this deep awareness of yourself. You're a separate region in this soup. Let it bring awareness of the people in your life, of the animal world all around, and of course the plant world. Then the planet and the world, the whole world of like suns and moons and stars and that kind of thing. And then other people around the cosmos. And then be aware of the entire cosmos. It's at your fingertips. Okay, let that pink love saturate you to the point that you fall in love with yourself and develop a sense of humor that reminds you you're human. You're human. And even with all of what you might think of as gifts and shortcomings, all together, don't leave anything of yourself out. Know that you have begun to unfold your tremendous potential. That pink golden light is amazing stuff. Then, once you've done letting that awareness saturate you, then get up and go get a large jar, like a curd jar, canning jar, ball jar, and put the remaining golden white light mixture into the jar. Then put the jar in the refrigerator. And any time you need another dose of enlightenment and awareness, take another tablespoon. Just to open up the top of your skull, drizzle it in, and let it saturate. Once you've put the jar in the refrigerator, go back and sit down for just a moment. Take another breath. And finally, slowly return your attention to the everyday world. As you go through the rest of the week or the month, know that your heart is full of good stuff. And your mind has had a little dose of understanding and enlightenment. So you now know that anything that happens in the world can be treated with your special concoction of golden pink light, and that it will carry you into an even more expansive consciousness with many more options. And keep yourself quiet inside as you move through the days. And take a deep breath and return to your environment, wherever you are. Okay? That's it.
That was wonderful. Thank you.
All right. I think one of the things that I hope people will understand is that when you do something like that, It doesn't, it's not pretend. Okay? So it has an impact. So I tell my students all the time that the symbolism doesn't just represent the experience, it actually contains the experience. And so when you go through those motions in your consciousness, consciousness doesn't differentiate between what you imagined and what you actually experienced. It's all real as far as consciousness is concerned. So, with that, you said you had some questions about consciousness. Do you want to ask them?
I have a lot of questions, and then I want to wrap up with a question about
All right.
our reality and how we shape our own reality.
Okay.
When we think about the true origin of Earth humans,
Uh-huh.
the meat suits now, we were genetically modified
Hmm.
to be good workers, but to not have an expanded consciousness.
Um, well, yes and no. Just keep going.
My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that our DNA was a little tinkered with to make it a little harder for us to perceive outside of a very narrow range.
And that is the current whatever going around.
Okay. Here's my question. First of all, is that the case? And then that moves me into if consciousness is one of the features of consciousness is awareness.
Right.
And human awareness is so narrow. I mean, it's so very narrow.
Oh,
Why do some people, for instance, like you, have a Kundalini experience that opens up your awareness
mm,
and some don't? And for those who have not had some transformative energetic experience like a Kundalini awakening,
yeah.
what can they do to physically open up those perceptions?
Okay. So let's go back to the first question. Humans have been tinkered with, we'll say. Okay. So when let's see, how do I begin? um, so a human life, humans are responsible for reproducing humans. Okay. And maybe you've heard me say that before. So one of the reasons that I came here was because it was a suggestion of my teacher, one of my teachers. But the goal was to really get an in-depth understanding of how challenging it is for a population at the third dimensional level, at this frequency level, even though it's kind of a high three-dimensional, because there's layers within each dimension, but how difficult it is for them to transform, to reach a higher level, because they have to rebuild everything. And
And
they
when
have
you
to
say rebuild, are you talking about our systems or internally?
both. You have to rethink everything. You have to re-understand. You have to learn a whole new level of science and engineering and physics. You have to reach a whole new way of doing your relationships, a whole new reason for being, and all new structures. So everything that we have at this level and on planet Earth in 2024 is destructive. And that's one of the things that you begin to correct once you move up into a higher dimension of consciousness. So let's come back to the bottom line. We have to keep ourselves going. So with that in mind, most people would say, oh, she's talking about sex and having babies. No, it's not that simple. That's just a small piece of it. There are teams of people who go around the cosmos and they seed life in various places. They study the minerals, they study the atmosphere, they study everything about that place in time. And they also study the evolution of the frequencies in that location because frequencies interact and produce other frequencies. And so you have to have a deep understanding of how to map those frequencies. But then you will maybe then say, okay, we're going to tweak the energies on this particular planet, and then we're going to leave it alone for 10,000 years and see what grows out of that, or 40,000 years, or 50, or whatever it takes. And so you don't go in and start chopping people up, which is how everything gets presented on the internet today. What you do is very, very inobtrusively change a little frequency and see who responds to it and how many, and how much of a response they make. So does that make sense? So,
Yes.
so once a tweak is made, some beings evolve out of that. Let's just skip over a whole bunch of stages and say some beings evolve. And you evaluate the beings and you say, okay, could do more, could do better. So you tweak again. You don't throw away the people you've already had an impact on or created. You just retweak. And now you get another level of people and you see how they are and what their consciousness is capable of and what they can create.
Okay, let me stop you here. When you say tweak, Penny, are you talking about they're tweaking like in a lab with lab coats on,
No,
or they're tweaking energetically? And if they're tweaking energetically, how do they do that?
with beam technology is probably the best way to describe it. You have other populations, other groups of people that are very advanced, okay, that travel the cosmos. They know how planets and stars and suns and moons and all that interact. And every so often, a group of planets will come together. This is the basis for astrology. And they will impart they'll bathe a particular location in certain frequency energies. And so the people who are watching that, who've mapped that and are waiting for that configuration to take shape, they will come in and add a couple of frequencies to that. So they're not in the lab, they're not cutting people open or shooting them up with something or any of that kind of stuff. Okay. So it's a very slow process, and you want to hope that the beings that you've created don't destroy the whole thing before they get to the point that you have a chance to evolve some new people. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so the tweaking goes on over thousands, tens of thousands of years, and then you get a group of people. Let's just jump to okay, we have humans. Okay? So the humanoid form is an incredibly versatile pattern. And that pattern then can be tweaked in many, many ways. When they were originally tweaking, if I can call it that, I'm always afraid I'm going to say twerking, which means something else.
That's something completely different. That's another show.
I know, right. So when they're busy looking at and evaluating the people that they've created, they leave the people alone that were less than what they hoped would be, that didn't measure up to their goal. Okay? So that's the humans that we have on planet Earth right now. That particular line of humans, they thought would never amount to anything. They didn't do anything about it. They didn't, they just, that they're a lost cause. Well, that has become the great excitement in our part of the galaxy.
Okay. So what's the excitement around? We're the losers. They left us.
Yeah, well, they watched, and they have occasionally done something to protect us, because when you're young and dumb, it's easy to be taken over. So that's the struggle that we're in right now. Somebody decided to take over the planet, and in the meantime, we, the residents here, have been getting a first class Yale level, Harvard level education in what not to do in terms of government, what not to do in terms of medicine, in terms of food, in terms of education, in terms of religion, in terms of business and trade, etc. We have been treated to this extraordinary demonstration of corruption, of what happens when a system gets corrupted. So the people from elsewhere will say, are they going to do anything? Are they going to go down? If they let themselves go down, well, that's it, it'll all be wiped out and we'll start over. And they have started over here a couple times. But we are people who are incredibly resilient and very smart. So now let's move to the piece about
No.
unfolding the self.
Okay, I got to stop you here for a second. So you just said that we're incredibly resilient and very smart. How
Yeah,
did we get that way if they left us because we weren't quite measuring up?
because we've used our consciousness.
So we have advanced ourselves on our own. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. And that is what is so intriguing. We have an incredibly polluted planet. We have incredible corruption, terrible food. The air is full of crap and corruption. The water is awful, and we just keep ticking along. And so other people have said, man, that is a very resilient population. And yeah, some people get sick and some people go down early, but the big bulk is they're hanging in there. And so they then have said, wow, that kind of resilience, that's a very special kind of DNA. Now, there have been other experiments that were done. Some of the people that, let me say it this way, some of the later experiments that happened after us were very much more advanced. They were already like ETs right from the get-go.
But were they on this planet or another planet?
They were, but when you evolve, you disappear. You go into the higher realms. So it looks like we're the only ones here. We're the only ones that have ever been here. That's not really true. The giants, we were much taller, much bigger. There've been a whole series of step downs in terms of size, because the smaller the size, the better chance of survival. And that's really where we're at. When you have to feed a 30-foot body,
that's a lot of food.
yeah.
So when we hear from channelers, for instance, Penny, you are much more powerful than you know.
Yeah, right.
Well, if we started out as the clunkers that they just left behind, are they just fluffing us up so that we'll keep fighting, or?
No, because consciousness is the feeling state of energy, and energy is the motion of consciousness. So this, so as soon as you leave oneness and move into duality, which is a wonderful step, people poo-poo that all the time. I'm like, stop that. Duality is what makes us have a chance to be alive. Because if you're back in oneness, you ain't there anymore. The individual does not exist in oneness. So anyway, that whole business of misunderstanding consciousness, if consciousness is the feeling state of the energy, and energy is the motion of consciousness, that should tell you right there, look at the power that we have in our head. Look at all the different kinds of energy that exist in the world. All of those are the motion of consciousness. And when you know or learn, and this is the goal for advanced consciousness, how to manage those energies, what you're really doing is managing consciousness. Consciousness is what manages those energies. And in the lab, when I was working with Dr. Levengood, that's what we ran into again and again was, holy cow, Plasma responds directly to consciousness, directly.
Okay.
And that's, we are not taught that. So we're taught to be dumb. We're taught to think small. We're taught to focus on stupid stuff, on things that do not nurture the unfolding, the full flowering of the human being. So the flower of life is an old logo, an old symbol indicating the full unfolding of the human, in which case you don't just have 7 chakras, you're nothing but a whole bunch of big chakras, and energy is coming in from everywhere. Energy is consciousness. So all of that consciousness is at your fingertips. And that's just not what we're taught. We aren't taught. And so it's, the goal is to educate people well enough that they begin to explore and begin to experiment and begin to try stuff. And then they discover, oh, wow, look what I did. Oh, dear.
So why did you and why do others, not I'm not signaling you out or singling you out.
Yeah.
Why did you have a Kundalini experience and then another body does not?
Oh, I've been asked that a million times. I just don't have a very good answer, but I have some answers. Okay. And so one of the things that is absolutely essential to reach higher consciousness. Now, I did not know this back, when I was 31, but one of the things that you have to do is follow your heart. Okay. Follow your passion, follow your heart. Why? Because in that is your connection to the Godhead and to the power that people are looking for. So when you start to follow your heart, come hell or high water, what happens is that you begin to have an active relationship with Source. And you begin to discover that it will respond. It will produce answers that you want. It will produce people that you want in your life. It will, I could go on, okay? But you get the idea. You begin to have an active relationship with that core source. That I didn't know at the time. But once you do that, once you follow your heart, either because you're ignorant or because you're naive or because you just happen to be there, you allow yourself to feel exactly where you are at. And feeling is the secret. And so what happens when you step into fully immersing yourself in the feeling of the moment, that's when all of your filters are down, all your barriers are down, everything's open. And that's the thing, the submarine, the poke the hole in the submarine example. That's when energy comes shooting through you and causes all kinds of havoc. We are meant to unfold, and for that energy to unfold us, and as it moves through, it rewires everything, your chemistry, your brain, your perception. And the result is you are now at the next stage of development. And it's a huge change. It's huge. And I just got a letter from somebody last month, and he said, "Oh my, I'm 5 years into my Kundalini. Everything you've said, the unexpected orgasms in public, the strange energies." I got another letter from another guy. He said he woke up practically. He was doing yoga, Kriya yoga stuff. And I've had those experiences. They're quite amazing. But the energy takes over, and that it's intelligent energy, and now it's guiding you. If
Okay.
you listen, then you start unfolding more and more and more, and you
Okay.
understand more and more and more.
So if we're talking about every human was intended to unfold.
Yep.
Is it always like a full-blown all at once experience like
No.
you had, or do some people kind of unfold slowly over time, which
Yes.
seems more manageable to me?
It's much more manageable. So, yeah, much more. What happens if it's slow, is it'll be slow, it's just as painful, okay? There's not many ways around.
When you
I mean
say painful, what do you mean by that? It's
I
not
mean,
physically painful.
no. Well, yes, no. So let's say that, you meditate and you're just meditating because you wanna lower your blood pressure, okay? Or something like that. Um, and as you start the meditation or as you keep going with it, your perception starts to change just a little bit. You know, you're in this very quiet place, and then you hear, your husband beating a dog. Make something up, and you're like, "Oh, that's terrible," and you say something to him, and then he yells at you. There's a shock there as you see a side of the person that you're with that you're not appreciating, or you suddenly recognize that your partner, male or female, whatever, is doing something that's unethical, or that they absolutely refuse to do anything except work on the shallowest of levels. You're trying to go deeper. They're not going with you. And so the pain is in watching that relationship
Oh,
break apart, and having the courage to stay with your own heart, to honor your own perceptions, and to reach for something more and better. So that's what I'm talking about when I say the pain. And there'll be a couple years worth of tears where you just cry over everything. And you'll think you're depressed and you won't sleep very well. Um, that's all part of the awakening process. And
mm.
it's and we don't, what do? We give people pills and say, "Oh, you're depressed or you're this or you're that." And we try to get them, buy some new clothes or get a job or move to a different house or, change husbands or find a lover and keep the one you got and, keep the husband you've got. Those kinds of solutions are not in honor of the part of you that is waking up and seeing what is around you, the truth of what is. And sometimes it's not pretty. And it's like so sad. And you realize it doesn't have to be that way. And so that's a very difficult period of time. It usually lasts 3 years, maybe 5, but it may not be the explosive thing at all, but it is relentless. And if you shut that down, you're probably going to get sick. You're going to get really sick. So you'll get some sort of disease.
Do you anticipate that as we move forward, Penny, on this planet, humans, that this full engagement of energy is going to become the norm?
Absolutely. I keep seeing it, and I was gonna say this in the look-see, and I didn't really address it. I thought I'll save that for next month, but because it was getting too long. But we are in a place where the more energy humans release, let me say it this way, the more humans who release themselves from the old ways of thinking and the old ways of doing, the more those energies, those people are going to emit a higher level of energy, and it's going to affect everybody around them.
Okay.
And the average person is connected to 150 people. Okay, so that's a chunk of people. And some of those people may complain and say, "Shame on you for, quitting your job," or just shame on you for wanting to do something that doesn't make enough money, or shame on you for getting a divorce or whatever. Um, they don't have a clue. They don't have a clue. But as we unfold ourselves, that awakening process is not quick. And for myself, it took 17 years after Kundalini because I fought it. I
Mhm.
shouldn't have fought it. It could have been much it could have been a 7-year process instead of 17.
And when you say 7 years, do you mean to totally integrate everything and
Yeah,
feel like you're normal again?
yeah, and to find new people, to
Yeah.
settle yourself, to establish a new career or get new education or new relationships, new outlook on life, et cetera, et cetera. It's a lonely journey.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I think that that's a common thing for a lot of people that
yeah,
are a little awake and aware it's lonely. Here's the last question I think I have now, and I'd
okay,
love to continue this discussion at some other time. When
okay,
you had your Kundalini awakening, I can remember you talking about it a while ago in a video, and you
yeah,
said you could hear the person half a mile away at the gas station what they were
oh, yeah,
thinking.
yeah.
Can you
I could hear
still
their phone conversation. They were on one of those public telephones where you put in a quarter.
Yeah, remember those? Gosh, so
Yeah,
funny. Can you
mhm.
still access that today, or is that faded away, that overwhelm of data coming in?
Okay, that is most of that has faded. You want that to fade, because it's so distracting.
Yeah,
You don't we need to have psychic manners. Just because you can read people's minds, and that's a kind of a colloquial way of saying things. It's not really accurate the way it's expressed, but
right.
um, you want some manners, and that you have to make that part of your ethics. What happens over time is uh, you realize that you don't have time to be listening in on other people's stuff. You got enough of your own stuff to
Yeah.
be dealing with. And if you're going to deal with it wisely and well, you need to stay focused here. When you need to know something, it comes to you.
You can go and get it.
Yeah. Or
Yeah,
you can go and get it. A lot of stuff just comes.
okay. Thank you. This was so very helpful. All
Yeah.
right, the next area I wanna delve into, and we'll
Mhm.
be brief,
Okay.
is is the whole when you create your own reality. In
Yes.
quotes. You create your own reality. Okay, I create my own reality. Well, what the hell, Penny? I did not manifest or create COVID. And as a matter of fact, I couldn't even have thought of anything as stupid and unfun as that. So
I know.
I did not create these wars. I did not create whoever's pretending to be Joe Biden. I did
Yeah.
not create this stuff, and yet it's in my reality system.
Yeah, it is.
So tell me how did I create my own reality when I couldn't even think of this stuff to create?
Okay, so a couple things. Number one, you're not the only one creating. There's all kinds of other people that are creating, and some of them are creating some real crap.
So were
Okay.
we being out-created?
No, no, they're just doing their thing. And they have positioned themselves, maneuvered themselves into a position where they can have an impact on a lot of people. Why? Because a lot of them are learning about power themselves. Okay. So you're not the only one creating. The second thing is it's a group reality. This isn't a hive system. This is a system in which every unique and weird and wonderful and wacky individual is putting in their creation. And it works. Now, if you were in, let's just say, in Afghanistan, which is a heavily Islamic culture, that's a whole different kind of reality experience than, say, living in Florida. And on the beach with a whole bunch of these half naked, beautiful bodies that wander up and down the beach, et cetera, et cetera. It's so what the magic of planet Earth is. If you want to learn about what it is to be in a system in which men and women are severely unequal, and it's very severe rules and punishments, then you can go into some locations and some cultural systems where that's the norm. If you want to be in a totally free, outrageous culture, you go to California. If you want to live in a place where, you get the idea where there's big machines being invented and built, etc., then you might go to Gary, Indiana, or Pennsylvania in the early 1900s. So each location has its own culture. And for some reason, and this is one of my things that I look at, it's like, how does all of this work as well as it does? And sometimes it doesn't. And we're headed into a time when it doesn't work as well. And there's going to be some warlike behavior, some serious kinetic fighting. But for the most part, it works. And it allows people everywhere to look across the planet and say, I want to go over there and experience that. And I was just talking with somebody while I was at the Tesla conference who came from Uruguay and was living here in the U.S. And what I was aware of the whole time was that sense of her willingness to reinvent herself again and again and again by hopping from culture to culture.
Mhm.
And that's one of the magic things of this place, which I love. It's not like that every place.
Okay. So we're not the only ones creating in our reality. So we're going to see in our reality things that we did not necessarily dream up ourselves.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
then we could say that what we really can manage is how we respond to those things. So,
That's right.
a lot of people during the whole COVID thing, they stayed in their house and wore a mask and did a lot of stuff. I started a hiking club. So my experience was different than
Yeah,
their experience. So in that sense, although I did not create COVID, what I created was my reaction to COVID.
that's right. You
Okay.
create your own little world. Every
Okay.
single individual lives in a world of their own. The joy is in connecting that world to other worlds. So when COVID happened, I ignored it. It never happened as far as I was concerned.
It was stupid.
I went where I wanted. I didn't wear a mask. I did what I wanted. I didn't lock down. It was like, what's the matter with all these people? I still see people wearing masks.
I
I'm
know.
like, do you know how bad that is for you?
I know.
But they'll have their own lessons, and it says something about the mindset. People are defending and hiding at the same time.
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah.
if we I'm trying to
Well,
tie this
let me
into
add one more thing. If
okay.
you know your mind and you know thyself, quote unquote, and you know what you want and you know what you don't want, that's all you need to know. I mean, you can continue expanding and exploring, and we what do they call that? Cherry pick our experiences from everywhere, from everybody, thoughts, behaviors, etc. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
That's something that we think. We either have to hide or we have to protect ourselves or we have to defend. No, you have to know yourself and what you want.
Yeah.
And a sense of humor goes a very long way.
Long way. Okay, so to wrap these two concepts up, the expansion of consciousness and the ability to
Yeah.
perceive, what could you say that we have been out manifested in a way by the naughty boys? In other words, what I hear is that they really remember things that perhaps we're not aware of about how to create events. And as we expand our consciousness, maybe it just becomes a force within itself instead of a kinetic battle. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure it makes sense to me, but let me try to answer a piece of that. Um, we haven't been out manifested. What we need to recognize is that there are cycles in everything. And once a cycle of corruption gets started, it typically is going to have to finish. If
Okay.
you let it finish without ever standing up, it's going to take you out, possibly. But if you watch it and then you stop responding, um, they're going to turn tail and run eventually. They're going to change their stance. And that's coming. That is coming. And I think that's going to be a response to what I was saying in the look-see, which is that there's been a shift and that people have decided, I'm not having this and I'm doing that. And that gets communicated telepathically as a frequency set. And those people that are at the top and the people who are below the top who are dishing out orders, and the people who are following those orders down at our level and trying to enforce the crap, they're all going to get that message. This isn't working. And I think we're going to see huge defections over the next 6 months. People saying, no, I never said that. I didn't do that. I didn't think that, I didn't make that rule.
Yeah,
And
it wasn't me, except here you are on Instagram.
yeah, yeah, right. I think that that is going to be a joy to those of us who have been holding the line.
Yeah,
So,
wonderful.
take heart, people.
Yeah, and with that, what more can we say? Things are coming
Yeah,
up roses.
right. Yeah, we're headed for a rough patch in terms of finances, in terms of, there's just some stuff that has to now get cleaned up. We'll put it that way.
Yeah,
So, yeah, have what you need for the next year so that going out is minimal, because that's what's going to be dangerous, is going out to try to find what you need.
okay.
And
All right,
not
great.
everywhere, only in some locations. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
All right, this has been a wonderful conversation, Penny. Thank you so much
Oh,
for
you're
so
welcome.
generously sharing your time every month and answering
Oh,
endless questions about things that seem probably very simple to you.
well, they are, but I understand because I was there, and the little bit of understanding I have was a hard one. And it's like, okay, guys, let's make this easy.
Yeah,
This is how it works. This is what to be aware of. So, yeah.
yeah. Okay. And you
Um,
can find Penny at pennykelly.com, and she's also, of
yeah,
course, here on YouTube and Rumble and
yeah.
BitChute and just about everywhere. Patreon. I've been a Patreon member since the very beginning. I think I was number 1 or number 2 in
Oh
line.
my goodness.
And you can find me here on YouTube at Journey to the New Earth.
Yeah.
You can check out videos there. Penny, thank you again. This has been
Oh, you're
wonderful. And
welcome.
thanks everyone for tuning in and listening to our conversation. We
I
really
know.
appreciate you showing up.
Yeah. Yeah. We've been on the journey for a while, and it's about to get exciting, you guys. So hang in there.
Yeah. Get your popcorn.
There you go.
All right.
Okay. All right. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much. So, want to say goodbye? Bye,
Goodbye.
everybody.
See you next month.